Matthew chapter 13. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous, and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. "Have you understood all these things?" Jesus asked. "Yes," they replied. He said to them, "Therefore, every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old." When Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. "Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers?" they asked. "Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things?" And they took offence at him. But Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor, except in his own town and in his own home." And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith.
Maps marked with an X, pirate ships, the black spot of judgment, Caribbean tropical islands, and one-legged sailors bearing birds on their shoulders. These are the elements of a good treasure story. Treasure is a concentration of riches, usually from ancient history, considered lost and forgotten until rediscovered. A buried treasure is probably the most legendary type of treasure. Most often the treasure was obtained and then buried in a remote place, with the hoarder intending to return to it later, often with the help of a treasure map. But of course we do not need treasure anymore. We have internet banking instead of maps with an X, secure funds transfers instead of ships and tropical islands, and PIN numbers instead of parrots. I really like the idea of finding treasure. Really, though, treasure is a romantic idea in the back of my mind. The idea of this wealth that someone else has collected together and hid is not that likely. I would love to stumble across it and have the treasure become mine. However, even though it would be wonderfully dramatic and exciting, the idea of treasure is, in reality, fantasy. Except for a select few archaeologists, entrepreneurs, and random diggers, a treasure story is only a ripping yarn that we will tell. I think that in Jesus' day, it was no different. The treasure story was meant to attract. It's told to excite. It is spoken so to get people involved and connected. To do with treasure and what we may feel, even if it is a romantic idea, is what Jesus wants his listeners to think like and respond to when it comes to the kingdom of heaven. In Matthew 13:44, Jesus starts to tell stories about treasure and things hidden and found. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Some details of the story I want, but are not there. The setting could assume that someone has buried a treasure and left or died. The new owner of the field is unaware of its existence. The finder, perhaps a labourer, is unable to easily extract it, so he buys the field. For this guy, such a discovery would be a dream come true. However, you know what this story is meant to do. We are meant to put ourselves into this story. We are the one who finds it. What would you do if you stumbled across a treasure in a field you were working in? What lengths would you go to that made sure you would get it? The kingdom of heaven is that for people who belong to God. The hidden treasure shows that the kingdom of heaven is not revealed yet. We may have found it, but it is not out yet. How far would you go to know and be with God? That is the question for every Christian. We are used to asking and relying on how far God is willing to go to know and be with us by what Jesus did and does. The kingdom of heaven is more than that. How far are you willing to go for God? And what would you give to get the kingdom of heaven as yours? Jesus makes this point in Matthew 13:45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. This story is meant to make us realize the great value of the kingdom of heaven. Not just a treasure, but also a precious and rare thing like a pearl. It is such good fortune to find these precious items. However, finding these hidden things is not so much lucky, but a special privilege for the finder. Do not forget that the merchant was looking for fine pearls. It was his life aim and ambition. It is a source of joy to find these things. It is also a challenge once you've found them. The man in the story gives up all he has in order to get what he had found. So we place ourselves into this story and we ask, is it my aim and ambition to be with God in his kingdom of heaven? It may be hidden from normal view. So, ask yourself, what am I doing to find it? And what will I give when I do find it? Jesus tells another story, switching from the romance of treasures to fishing. He makes the kingdom of heaven practical, maybe so his fishermen listeners would pick up their ears. Matthew 13:47. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. The kingdom of heaven is like an inescapable thing for the fish. This story places the listener not as the fisherman, but as the fish. It is not about finding what is hidden, but being inescapably caught. You, as the fish, are not in control of this destiny. You're going to be caught in that unseen, hidden thing, the net, or the kingdom of heaven, and you will be sorted. If there is a precious thing in this story, it is the good fish that the fisherman wants to keep. Jesus said in Matthew 13:49 and 50, "This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." This is a terrible story if you are a fish. In light of the first two stories of treasures and pearls, this story of the good fish in the net could be very good news for us as listeners, though. Like the parable of the wheat and the weeds in Matthew 13:24 to 30, we think of the final judgment of God, the sorting of the edible fish from the rest. Jesus says that the angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous in the same way. Do we understand this? The first and last parables in Matthew 13 are important. The parable of the soils was the first parable that introduced every other parable. And the last parable in Matthew 13:52 wraps up all of them. Jesus asks his disciples if they get the importance of all these stories. He wants them to understand. Matthew 13:36. Then he left the crowds and went into the house. His disciples came to him. Then he asked them in Matthew 13:51, "Have you understood all these things?" They say they do, and Jesus tells them one more story. A very short one, and again, a treasure story, kind of. Matthew 13:52. He said to them, "Therefore every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old." One last illustration to reveal their responsibility as disciples of the kingdom of heaven, and Jesus teaches his disciples their role. They are bearers of the kingdom of heaven, the old covenant and the new. The idea of treasure here seems to mean something slightly different than it did before. Not so much a precious thing, but a purpose of treasure. Something to be kept safe, but not hidden away for long. We are not dragons holding on to what we've hoarded. Jesus calls it a storeroom where a person would keep treasure. They would have a special place and purpose, and it would be brought out for others to see. Jesus wants his disciples to understand that their heart is a storeroom for the kingdom of heaven, but that is not where it stays. The kingdom is to be seen and taught. The owner of the house, the disciples then and now, need to teach people by bringing out and displaying the treasure of the kingdom of heaven, like Jesus did when he taught in parables. Have you thought about this in yourself? If you are a Christian and follow Jesus, then the kingdom of heaven exists in your heart. That is, your whole self. The kingdom of heaven was established on earth when Jesus Christ came into the world. We enter the kingdom of heaven when Jesus enters our lives. How many other lives have you impacted, not for the kingdom of heaven, but with the kingdom of heaven in what you say and do? This is great news for those that hear and see. Not great news for everyone. Matthew 13:54. Jesus, coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Verse 57, and they took offence at him. Matthew does not tell you why they took offence. He is only concerned in showing you that they did. I think Jesus' hometown did not get him and were offended by him because of their ignorance. They were offended because they did not understand his teaching. The kingdom of God does not necessarily work the way you might expect. All the parables of Jesus show this. So we as disciples of Jesus are to expect people not to get that. They will take offence at us. They will take offence at our loving God and putting him first. They will take offence at how far we are willing to go. They will take offence at how much we're willing to give. Even those we feel should know what and why we do what we do for the kingdom of heaven will take offence at us. David Livingstone was a Scottish missionary with the London Missionary Society and an explorer in Africa. He's most famous for a phrase spoken by Henry Morton Stanley, who searched for him for 10 months. Upon finding Livingstone in Tanzania, Stanley reportedly asked very mildly, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume?" Livingstone is also known for being Africa's greatest missionary. Many are offended by this. You see, we only know of him being directly involved in one person's conversion. The one man he told about Jesus was Sechel, the leader of the Quena people. He came to know Jesus and himself taught of the kingdom of God to all his people. He then led many other missionary teachers of the kingdom to the surrounding tribes. Livingstone showed and taught the kingdom. Sechel showed and taught the kingdom, and nearly his entire people came to know Jesus. It is estimated that Sechel did more to grow Christianity in the 19th century southern Africa than all other European missionaries put together. The body of David Livingstone was buried in England, where he was born, but his heart was buried in the Africa he loved. At the foot of a tall tree in a small African village, his native friends dug a hole and placed in it the heart of a man who they loved and respected, who shared with them the kingdom of God. If your heart were to be buried in the place you loved most in life, where would it be? In your TV room? In an appropriate space down at the office? In your car? In your caravan? Where is your heart? There your treasure will be, and your life also.